Right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and anyone who identifies any differently from any of those things, thanks for joining me once again, where we do a quick response video to yet another one of the ridiculous, pustulous, nonsense-filled, excremental videos put out by this ridiculous man-child calling himself vegan water pistol or vegan Nerf gun or something, I don't know. This is a bloke that I had an exchange with online, as you know, a couple of days ago. It was comedy value stuff. It wasn't really supposed to be a proper debate. It was more supposed to be a discussion, which it was. I hope you all enjoyed the entertainment. The boy was given quite a lesson, I think, and he was absolutely dominated. And anyway, you make your own assessment of that. He's already made his own assessment of that, and he's so deluded, so utterly divorced from reality in any way, shape and form, that he's actually claiming victory. What a shock. They always do that, of course, don't they, these buffoons. Anyway, I've challenged him to front up. He wanted to have a debate, an actual proper debate with data underpinning it, and he then claimed that I'd refused that, which I haven't. And so I've sent him an email saying, well, son, front up with your paper, and if you want some rules, we can talk about those, and if you want a moderator, we can get one of those in too, and if you want to have a proper debate and teach me a lesson with the data, go ahead, son, let's see it, and I'm waiting for a response on that. I would like to say very clearly, though, Mr. Vegan Noodle, or whatever your name is, you have 48 hours to respond to that debate challenge before I take action against your illegal breach of copyright in re-uploading my video owned by me onto your channel without my permission. Okay, so you'd best get onto that fairly smartly, I would imagine. Anyway, let's deal with your latest rubbish. It's yet another crack at Joey, who is operating 10 million levels higher than you could ever possibly hope to achieve, son, because Joey's got more than 3 brain cells and you don't. Apparently, let's hear all about it though, and we'll put you right where you're wrong. And spoiler, boys and girls, as per the other night, it's fucking everywhere. Okay, off you go.
If you still think saturated fat is bad,
If I still think saturated fat is bad? Well, yeah, I do actually, because, you know, if you read any of the vast experiments that have been done.
Okay, there have been no experiments done to show that saturated fat is causally associated with any deleterious health outcome of any kind in human beings over any period of time, as I clearly stated in our discussion the other night. You'll also notice that what you have on the screen here is correlative associative regression plots, and the outcome statistic is blood cholesterol, which has nothing whatsoever to do with deleterious health outcomes unless a person is experiencing a lower level of cholesterol than they ideally should, and that would be ideally and normally controlled by their genes. In fact, here is a chart, for example, on the screen now of the largest associative data set available on this topic anywhere on the planet. This represents hundreds of millions, if not billions, of data points, person years of follow-up, and it plots the relationship associatively between the level of total cholesterol and, as such, any particular subfraction of that, because of the known relationship between these things on average, and mortality from all causes and from a number of sub-causes as well. And what you can see when you read the chart on the screen here is that the lower your total cholesterol goes below 220 milligrams per deciliter, the more mortality goes up in association with that, from all causes and from every sub-cause as well. Whoopsie daisy. So there's that. Yep, so it would appear, if anything, that a higher level of cholesterol in the blood seems to be associated with better outcomes, not worse. Sorry about that, though, with all the facts and that, and the actual science and stuff. That's a shame for you, isn't it, Mr. Vegan something or other, whatever you are?
Show the harmful effects of saturated fat.
You know, these charts don't show harmful effects of saturated fat. They show an association of saturated fat intake as reported by people, not even as measured, against the serum cholesterol that those people are experiencing in a snapshot style on a test on one occasion. That's not a deleterious health outcome. Okay, that's pretty straightforward, I would have thought, even for a reasonably intelligent goldfish. Not, however, for this vegan, apparently. Okay, what's next?
Just one quick example.
No, this is not an example of health outcome. This is an example of serum cholesterol. That's not a health outcome.
Look up a study, dietary lipids and blood cholesterol, quantitative meta-analysis of metabolic ward studies.
Yeah, I have looked it up and I've read it very carefully, unlike yourself, son, because you don't have the skills, the requisite knowledge, the wisdom or the common sense to actually understand what it is you're reading and what its place in the objective reality in which we all find ourselves actually is. That's a shame for you.
You can clearly see that saturated fat has a dose-dependent effect on
Okay, well, you haven't even got that correct, because the noise around the least squares regression lines on these charts is enormous. It's enormous, son. The 95% confidence intervals around this associative data set are really, really not very convincing whatsoever. Any empirical scientist, professor of health science like myself, specializing in cardiovascular pathophysiology, among other topics, including pure and applied statistics and statistical inference, would be able to tell you that. A boy with no training whatsoever or understanding of what he is reading would miss that point entirely, as has occurred here. That's a shame for you. Dear oh dear, it's not looking good for you, is it? No. What's next?
blood cholesterol, LDL blood cholesterol going up. So yeah, I still think saturated fat is bad.
Well, why? Because more cholesterol total, ergo more LDL as a subfraction of all of that, seems to be associated with better outcomes, not worse. Whoops.
We've known that it causes heart disease since before the moon landing.
Wrong. There is no empirical evidence to support that ridiculous, ludicrous claim existing anywhere in the data, in the peer-reviewed literature, anywhere. If anything, what exists is associative data sets. There are 5 major meta-analyses available on this topic. 5. That have been done in the last decade, so since 2012. Today is the 31st of August 2022 as I record this. Okay, 5 major meta-analyses, all with multi-million person years of follow-up. All 5 agree absolutely that there is not even a meaningful association between the intake of saturated fat as reported by people and the incidence of cardiovascular problems over any period of time whatsoever. Okay, so while association cannot establish causality, lack of association can eliminate the possibility that causality is in effect, and that is the situation we have here, Mr. Vegan Wombat. Okay, sorry about that with the facts again and the data. Are you sure you want to have a data-based debate with me? That'd be a good idea. I'm quite happy to. And as I said, you've got 48 hours to respond to my email before I copyright strike you. Okay? So you better get onto it. What's next?
Actually, so yeah, I still think it's bad.
Well, you're still a fool then. You're still an absolutely indoctrinated puppet of the propagandists. You're still an absolute ignorant little boy then. No, saturated fat is not bad. We have been gaining the vast majority of our energy in the form of largely saturated animal fats from at least 4.5 million years, it seems. That's what the anthropology tells us. It's absolutely clear and unequivocal. That's what the stable isotope nitrogen and carbon testing is telling us. Sorry about that. That's the way our genes have been selected for, and as such, that's how our body design in terms of our organ systems and metabolic pathways, etc. are. Facts, though, again. Right, what's next?
Very important that you watch this video. Please watch this video. Okay. 54% of breast milk is saturated fat. What is...
Yeah, well, you can make it sound like it's like, oh, it's full of saturated fat by going on the caloric percentage of the composition if you want to. It's more like...
Well, how else would you do it? What other method would you use to gain any kind of gross rough gauge on the nutritional components of any so-called or proposed food substance?
Like 4.5% if you're going by weight.
Yeah, but it's because it's mostly water. Do you really think you're making any kind of a point here, you buffoon? My word. Stunning. What's next?
But whatever, like, obviously, you know, I'm just showing his bias here. Like,
Yes, that's what you're doing. You're showing his bias. Good. Wow. The Dunning-Kruger is stunning in this boy, isn't it? The total and absolute lack of engagement with objective reality here is absolutely beyond belief, isn't it? Right, what's next?
stupidest video I've ever seen.
Says this boy. Okay, good.
milk? It's a food that a human is supposed to consume for
An infant.
its first several years of life.
Ah, yes, good. Well done, Joey.
Yeah.
Humans started breastfeeding 2.5 million years ago and have been doing so ever since. There are lots of people
I think they've been doing it a bit longer than that, Joey.
who are extremely illogical, let's just say, who argue that saturated fat is bad. If it's bad, why is it found in such large quantities in the food that is supposed to sustain a human child for its primary years of development? Nobody would ever make the argument, at least that I've heard, that breast milk is unhealthy because of saturated fat and, therefore breastfeeding is bad. I've never heard that argument. I hope I never do, because that would be that'd be crazy.
Well, there are parents who are feeding their children vegan diets, Joey. And when those parents are reported to the relevant authorities in any reasonable, sensible Western nation, those parents lose those children. Okay? So the authorities have got this one sorted. A vegan diet is not appropriate for a human being for any stage of life, let alone all of them. Certainly not for the formative years between birth and 2.5, 3 years of age. Absolutely not. Okay?
That'd be a claim only made by somebody who is a complete imbecile. It's just a radical argument, right? Not that we need the studies to prove something so glaringly obvious, but there's a ton of research showing the benefits of breastfeeding and the risks of not. I can get into that some other time.
Well, they're all associative studies, Joey, but that's fine.
I challenge anyone who thinks saturated fat is bad to address the fact that breast milk is 54% saturated fat. Can they explain that? I don't think so.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to talk about like human breast milk.
Yes, that's what he's implying and talking about. So you don't even know what you're going to say next, do you, Buffhead? It's incredible.
Well, for starters, you are reductively calling saturated fat, when in reality, like
You really don't know what you're going to say at all here. You're really, really struggling to desperately wait for your brain to catch up with providing you with any kind of an idea whatsoever, aren't you? Stunning.
saturated fat is like a broad umbrella. So like for instance, if you're talking about human breast milk, the fat portion contains specific triglycerides of palmitic and oleic acid, and also lipids with trans bonds, for example, vasinic and conjugated linoleic acid.
So?
Whereas if you wanted to like compare that to something like steak, for example, you're looking at capric acid, lauric acid, myristic acid, pentadecilic acid.
So?
Palmitic acid,
So?
Magarin acid, stearic acid, arachidic acid, lignin.
See, this is a boy that doesn't even know how to pronounce the names of these acids, and he's given us absolutely no reason to believe that any of them are negative in any way whatsoever, and we're supposed to believe this ridiculous buffoon has the first semblance of a clue of what he's on about. Are we? Right.
No, ceric acid, like it's a completely different like composition, dude.
So, dude?
Like, oh well, haha, I've got the winning argument here.
Well, he has. However, you have no hope of ever having a winning argument from your base standpoint forward. No hope whatsoever, because you are wrong. And anyone with more than 3 brain cells can point to it straight away without breaking a sweat. As Joey did when he absolutely owned you in the debate you had with him a few days ago, as I did when I handled you like the child you are the other night on my channel, and I dragged you around the ring by the nose, and you sat there like a possum in the headlights, stunned, wetting your pants, shivering like a little child, and sipping on your little drink there every 3 seconds to try and cover your vast, absolute timidity, knowing full well that you were going to get your rear end handed to you, as you did.
Well, saturated fats in meat.
Yep. So?
But babies drink saturated fat in milk.
So?
Okay. Yeah, good one, bro. Like you're comparing like an infant consuming its mother's breast milk, which is largely healthy because it has hundreds of like bacteria that the child needs for growth.
And animal fat doesn't?
And then you're like, oh, well, saturated fat's also in steak, so steak must be healthy too for adults.
He didn't say that. You just said that. The clowns like you claiming saturated fat is bad, as you did earlier in this video, you did not distinguish between any of the different makeups of saturated fats found in different food substances. You made the blanket statements, yes I do, you said. I do believe saturated fat is bad, you said. Do you not even subject your own thought processes to 2 seconds worth of cursory refutation to think, hang on, am I digging myself into a hole here? Clearly you don't. You said saturated fat is bad. Joey is providing one example that might lead someone to understand that it is not necessarily bad. And I have already provided you with all the information you need to understand that the evidence of badness of saturated fat is absent from the literature. There is no evidence to support that claim, ergo, we can dismiss that claim. Unless you want to bring us an experiment to the table that disproves me on that. Good luck, it doesn't exist. What's next?
It's like, okay, well, firstly, you can't compare infants and adults. Their digestion is radically different. Secondly, like steak has a vast like array of other toxins in it too. Like
no, it doesn't have toxins in it necessarily any more than anything else.
Cadmium, mercury, lead.
Those things are environmental toxins. They pervade the environment. Some animals concentrate some of those things in their tissues. So do some plants. Nil pois.
BPA, H heterocyclic amines.
Right, so plants don't contain any toxins, do they not? And what has that got to do with saturated fat, buffoon? Nothing whatsoever. What's next?
Like, where do you want to go? Like,
I want to go to facts and logic and common sense. Unfortunately, though, however, none of those are languages with which you are remotely associated, you silly little boy.
Bovine leukemia.
Bovine leukemia is not a toxin. It's a disease suffered by cows. So you don't even understand that.
Good one, bro.
So good one, yeah. Good comeback, son. Do you have any evidence or facts? So far, you've supplied 4 charts from a study which compared the reported intake of saturated fat with the serum level of cholesterol, which proves absolutely nothing and is in line with what we would expect. We are still waiting for a single point that would lead us to believe that you have anything valuable or worthwhile to add to this discussion or any other. Let's see if it gets any better, shall we? Make your comment below now. Make your bet. Does it get any better? I'm picking... No.
He stopped drinking breast milk because saturated fat is in it. If saturated fat is bad, the only logical conclusion would be to argue that breast milk is unhealthy. That would have to be the connection. And I'd love to entertain that argument. I really would.
All right, let's do it next time we
These
debate.
doctors and scientists who are employing a line of logic are saying something that doesn't pan out. It doesn't work.
That's right. Observation is not in line with the hypothesis. The hypothesis being saturated fat is bad. Okay. All right. Do the observations bear that out? No, they don't. Case dismissed. Bang the gavel. We're done. What's next?
Food is horrible for us in adulthood, as people like to claim saturated fat is. Why would it be great for us as children? Why would that be the case?
I don't know.
There are no other examples of
That's right. You don't know. You don't know anything about anything whatsoever.
this in nature. So why would we decide that saturated fat is the outlier?
By the way, the fact that you can't find another example of something in nature has no bearing on any health claimant ever.
Says this guy who wants to tell us that cholesterol is a health outcome. No, it isn't. Says this guy who wants to live in a glass house and still throw rocks, like he wants to say, well, breast milk is different from cow fat, but still wants to make the blanket statement at the very beginning of his very same video that saturated fat is bad, okay, without providing any evidence that that is so, which of course is impossible because it does not exist.
Why would saturated fat be good for us in childhood, but bad for us in adulthood? How would that make?
I don't know.
That's right, you don't know anything about anything. You're a buffoon.
Maybe it's got something to do with the actual composition of the actual saturated fat in the...
Well, tell us how then, son. You can't even pronounce the names of the different saturated fatty acids that are present in saturated fats of various different kinds. So what makes you think that we would be filled with confidence that you would be able to differentiate between the different types as to proposed effects? Because we would also need you to bring some evidence to the table that any claim that you might like to make is so, which you won't be able to do either.
Actual foods.
The clear and obvious truth is that saturated fat is not unhealthy, and we should be eating a lot of it.
Correct. We've been doing it for 4.5 million years.
Oh, really? Well,
Yes, really.
well, that conclusion just galaxy brained the hell out of me. Come on.
Well, that's no surprise because it takes more than about 4 brain cells to understand what Joey's just said. That's your problem, son.
You got me there.
Yes, he did.
It's just, well, there's saturated fat in baby's breast milk. Of course adults should eat heaps and heaps of saturated fat.
No, they should do that because that's what they've been doing for 4.5 million years, and as such, positive selection pressures have moulded our physiology, metabolic pathways, etc. to suit that. It's Darwinian. It's pretty straightforward.
Duh.
That's right.
When people say healthy fats, they tend to be referring to avocados and nuts and olive oils, things like
Olive oil causes cancer.
Causes, there you go. Have you got any studies of an experimental nature to back up that ridiculous claim of cause and effect? No, you don't. You are spouting an opinion, and it's a mindless opinion. What's next? Olive oil is not indicated in the human diet. I'm not suggesting for a moment that it is, by the way. It is absolutely contraindicated, but not for the reasons that this idiot has just mindlessly spewed forth. Wrong, again.
But yeah, avocados and walnuts, yeah, pretty healthy actually.
No. Do you want to back that up with any experimental evidence that it's so, in any way, shape or form? No again? That's what I thought.
because these foods have monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats.
Right, both of which are problematic.
Which are hypothesized by these buffoons to not clog your arteries and cause you to drop dead from a heart attack, unlike saturated.
Okay, do you have any evidence to show that?
Says this guy, do you have any evidence? Do you have any evidence? When you want to espouse and spout mindless, stupid, ridiculous, unfounded opinions without providing any evidence either? This is insane. Incredible. Wow.
Avocados and walnuts clog arteries and cause heart.
He didn't say that either, by the way. You just said that. Joey did not say that. You are putting words in his mouth. It's pathetic. It's childish. It's sophistry. It's dishonest. And it shows that you are completely out of your depth, and there is nothing whatsoever about what Joey is saying that you can actually assail. So you have to make up some shit that he did not say to strawman him. It's ridiculous. You tried that with me the other night as well, and it didn't work, did it? Because it's never going to work with actually intelligent, scientifically minded individuals. Your destitution of competence, common sense, and ability to apply even basic logical premise is beyond belief here, son. You are the most arrogant, inane buffoon I have come across in a long time. This is just unbelievable. What's next?
What?
Good point. Well made.
It's a hypothesis, it's a belief, it's a religion, but it's wrong.
Yeah, and it's backed up by randomized control trials as well.
No, it isn't. Show me one. There are no randomized control trials to back up any claim of health or deleterious effect on health in human beings as regards any aspect of human nutrition whatsoever over any reasonable period of time. None at all. They do not exist. You are making shit up. Stop it.
Well.
It's very wrong. It's absurd. It's crazy to think that the saturated fat is bad paradigm is believed by everyone. I want an answer. I want an answer.
All right.
Why does saturated fat comprise the majority of breast milk if saturated fat is bad?
Brilliant comebacks, aren't they, boys and girls? Stunning intellect on this boy.
Why? It's insanity. I want an answer. I eat a lot of saturated fat. You know, I eat a lot.
Nice one, bro. I'd love to see your blood, like LDL cholesterol. I'd love to see your...
Well, we've covered that already with some actual facts and some actual inference based on actual data points from actual science, haven't we, buffoon? And we've shown you to be completely wrong. If what you've already seen wasn't enough, how about a couple of studies here, both of which are quite clear and unequivocal? Good.
Blood, like levels of heavy metals and industrial toxins as well.
Well, let's have a look at your levels of toxins in your system, buffoon. The ones that are interfering with even the most basic semblance of brain function, clearly and patently. Those ones, perhaps.
Raw butter to my steaks. I cook in lard or tallow if I cook. I eat meat with a lot of fat in it. I cook in lard or tallow if I cook. I eat meat with a lot of fat in it. People say food is fuel. They're right. Fat is the best fuel, not carbs. Fat is a beautiful fuel. It's not something to be afraid of. It's something we should all embrace and eat a lot of. Have a good day, everyone.
I will have a good day. Thank you, sir. Look forward to talking to you again. And yeah, that was really, 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 really dumb.
So, how many points would we give Mr. Vegan Soft on here? On his little presentation in this little video that he's made here? No points at all. Not one. Dismissed very, very easily with a flick of the wrist using actual data by myself here in no time whatsoever. Good. Are you sure you want to have a debate with me on the data that you claimed falsely, lied publicly, that I said I did not want to have? I absolutely do. You now have about 47 and a half hours left to respond to the invitation to meet me for such a discussion about any given paper. You choose a paper, one paper, and you sit down and you tell me why you think it's a good paper that proves your point in any way, and I will tear it and you to pieces without any problem whatsoever. You ridiculous man-child. You absolute imbecile. Right, the rest of you, you know the drill. Don't let the door hit you in the arse on the way out. And shall we have some music? 2, 3.